Today, I want to talk to you about Donald J. and the impact he might have on your investment portfolio and your income and our economy. I would imagine how you view the answer to that question depends on if you voted for him or not. But I've got a little bit of stuff to roll back the time and look back in history to see what we might be able to project could happen in this upcoming economy. And in the end, you can decide if what you're doing right now for your investments are what you want to keep doing, or if maybe you want to check out a new plan. So let's get to it. Maybe you've been wondering, should I move my investments around? What might happen to the economy under our new president? I almost wanted to say regime. So I guess it kind of depends on who you voted for, what you think might happen. But what I'd like to do is take you back in time to some historical economies to let you know what I think might happen. Back in the day, I used to watch The Apprentice. In fact, I did even read The Art of the Deal in the 80s. I think that's when it came out. I thought it was all right. I never was a super fan, but at that stage, I think he was doing pretty all right. By the time he was on The Apprentice, though, I was like, I don't think he's very good at this. But little did I know while I was watching The Apprentice what was really going on. You see, occasionally on the news, I would see that he was filing bankruptcy every once in a while. And I thought to myself, I do not know how you cannot make a casino profitable. That seemed kind of crazy to me. But nonetheless, I just basically went on that he was just some other business person until he became our president. And even though I didn't vote for him the first time, I did a little of this, and I also gave him the benefit of the doubt, hoping that he'd have good people around him, which he did, and he might listen to them and learn how to be a good president. He didn't do that. He was impeached twice, not because people were after him and it was a witch hunt. It was because he's corrupt. It's also why many of his businesses were cited. He had a nonprofit that he had to be revoked. Donald Trump is a corrupt man. He's not to be trusted. And we just gave him the great big levers of the federal government. This is pretty scary. He's also firing people like inspector generals, people at the DOJ, getting rid of people at the FBI. Some scary people are going to be in charge of our intelligence services. I don't even want to get all into it. Let me roll this back to some of the thought process that I have about this. I'm afraid we're going to head into something like the Great Depression. Now, I know that seems exaggerated, and I hate to be that kind of person. Generally speaking, I'm not that kind of person. We have booms, we have busts, we get over it, and it all comes together. But that's because we usually have two things: people in government who care, and people in government who know what they're doing. I do not believe Donald Trump has either of these two qualities, and I am extremely doubtful about any of the people he's bringing in. You see, what made the Great Depression is we had a growing economy, and we had some new tools in our toolbox that we didn't necessarily know how they worked. Like the Federal Reserve was just created in 1913. And it was pumping in a ton of money into the economy. Have you ever heard of something called the Roaring '20s? Right? That's because of all the money they were throwing in the economy. And you could even highly leverage stock accounts. These are called margined accounts. So you could put forward, say, $100, and they'd give you 10 times that to invest. This is why people jumped off the buildings when the market crashed. They would have to pay all that money back. Everybody with me? But you see, during the Great Depression, FDR put in things like the SEC, the Securities and Exchange Commission, that would govern rules to help protect investors and make this marketplace safer. Trump is rolling those safeguards back. Also during this period of time, there were great big wealthy people, the Rockefellers, JP Morgan, oh my gosh, I can't even think of all of them because all I'm thinking about today is today's billionaires. You see, these people can get through it, but without the underpinnings of economic safeguards, social safety nets that we have today, like Social Security, like they didn't have that then, people then don't have the money to get by. And the rich people can swoop in and buy it all up. I don't know if you're aware of it or not, I hope you are, but at the end of January, OMB, the Office of Management and Budget, part of the presidential team, decided to not pay out grants and monies. This was things like Medicaid, daycare money, a whole host of things. It's not within their constitutional rights to do this, and Congress decides what the budget should be, so the president shouldn't be doing this, but this is all part of Project 2025. It's what they wanted to do. And if they roll all of this back at some point in the future, when you take that much money out of the economy, things crash. This isn't just about people not having enough money for food, because we might be able to actually help them get food through food shelves, and some of us will be okay. But the big problem is you now have a constriction on what people are spending in the economy, and these cause recessions, and worse yet, depressions. I don't think Donald J. knows how this works. And I don't know about these other Project 2025 people, how much they really understand about this. I'm not about to give you investment advice. I'm no longer securities licensed. It's not my place. I can tell you that things are aligning, lots of stars that don't look real good. Now, if you love Trump and you think all this is worthwhile, I want to say kudos to you. At least you don't have the same fear, but this is the reality. The reason you don't have the same fear is chances are you don't understand how these things work. You cannot take a sledgehammer to a $6 trillion budget and a federal government that is there for the people, to protect the people. Now, I think we can all agree that we might want to get rid of waste, fraud, and abuse, but there is a healthy and constructive way to do this in a democracy, and there's a corrupt and cruel way to do it. I've always been fairly aggressive in my investment mix, but I decided to go ultra conservative, like the most conservative portfolio you can imagine, for a couple of reasons. My retirement horizon is, I'm hoping, maybe 5 years away. Now, granted, even when I mentioned this to my son, he said, Mom, I can't see you retiring in 5 years, and I probably won't. I love so much of what I do for work. I do. So I won't completely retire, but I want the flexibility to not have to work. Are you with me? People of my generation also lived through something called the lost decade. This was from the year 2000 to 2010, where we ran through a ton of market volatility, recessions, and our portfolios really didn't increase much by the end of the term. I don't want to lose all the gains that I've created the last several years. I worked hard to get them. I also had a divorce in the mix, and heck, I don't know about you, but under my divorce, I gave money to him. So I want to keep all the pennies I have, or as many pennies as I can. I ended up moving to about 70% bonds for now. I also kind of figured that if Jerome Powell is still in the Federal Reserve until May 2026, and he seems to be holding strong, that was the first soft landing we've ever had from higher inflation. And that inflation really wasn't that high, considering where we've been before and where we could go. And Jerome being in the Federal Reserve is one of the reasons that I more moved to bonds. Because I figure he will react if inflation starts to go up. If we get some Trump sycophant in there, what could happen to the economy will be even worse. So I moved my portfolio to a lot of bonds. I'm also thinking, because in 2 years I'll be 59 and a half, I might take all my money out of my Roth IRA and move it down here to Mexico. Bank CDs in Mexico run between 7 and 9%, but we'll see where things are at in 2 years. I'm glad I have that flexibility. I also want to say this. To my son, though, I told him what I plan to do and why I plan to do it, but I also said, if what I'm saying comes true, you have a lot of time to recover. He's also in a position to invest a lot if the market goes down. Because eventually, it'll come back up. I just don't want to wait for it. I'd like to know what you're deciding to do. Jot some notes down in the comments so I can find out what your thoughts are about what's going to happen under this Donald J. economy. A few months ago, I created a video about Jerome Powell and the Federal Reserve. If you click right there, you can watch it and learn some more about why it's important to keep the Federal Reserve independent. Hope to see you again soon.